My name is Yang, an orphan who has been diligently farming in the countryside for over a decade. Just as life was about to get better, a group of people barged into my home with an imperial edict. It stated that my entire clan was to be executed. Trembling, I took the edict, saw the name of the dreaded regent, and cried out my grievances to the heavens. Are you all mistaken? I don't know this person. The messenger delivering the imperial decree replied with a straight face, no mistake. You are the sister of the cousin's aunt's husband of the daughter brought by the ex-wife of the cousin of the great-grandfather's maternal uncle. Me. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. When I heard that I was the sister of the cousin's aunt's husband of the daughter brought by the ex-wife of the cousin of the great-grandfather's maternal uncle, I went numb. Then I let out a bitter laugh. I was so exasperated I actually laughed. He stood there in the wind, petrified on the spot. What kind of situation is this? When there's fortune to enjoy, I'm left out. But when there's hardship to share, I'm included. No one remembered me during the glorious times. But now that it's time for the execution of the 9 familial exterminations, they think of me to make up the numbers. I was taken away by the officers and escorted back to the capital. Awaiting execution after the autumn, with every step I took, I looked back 3 times, tears streaming down my face as I gazed at my small plot of land. Just yesterday I had sown the seeds, but I feared I would not live to see the harvest in autumn. Never did I imagine that my first trip to the capital in this lifetime would be to go to prison. The moment I was thrown into the dungeon, I thought to myself that the autumn execution was still a long way off. Since I'm here, I might as well make myself comfortable. So I decided to just lie down and take it easy. Working myself to death farming every day isn't as satisfying as the meals in prison. I lay on the haystack, one leg crossed over the other, rubbing my full, round belly. Life couldn't be more pleasant if only I could ignore the chattering of my rodent companion. All of this is thanks to that regent. Even though I lived a carefree life in the countryside, I had heard of his name. Legend has it that he looks fierce and terrifying, with immense strength able to snap a person's neck with just one hand. The floors of his residence are paved with gold, and even his rice bowls are edged with gold. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I ran back to the cell, stretched my hand out, and raised my voice. I'm innocent. Let me out. I'm more wronged than Doi. The on-duty jailer was drawn over by my howl and slapped my hand back inside. Get back, get back. Pull your hand in. What the hell are you innocent about? You've enjoyed so much privilege following the regent, and out of all these people, you're the only one crying injustice. Hearing this, I cried even louder. Others don't cry injustice because they've benefited from the regent's favor, so it turns out I'm the only one who hasn't enjoyed any of it. If this is considered favor, who would want it? Let whoever wants it take it. I haphazardly wiped away my tears and straightened my funeral attire and memorial tablet. I dare to ask, sir, what crime has the regent committed to warrant the execution of his entire clan? The late emperor is dead, and he was the regent. The new emperor naturally branded him as a remnant of the treacherous faction. If not you, then who should be executed? I cursed my misfortune. So I was just a pawn in their game, a sacrificial piece in the regent's downfall. I crouched on the ground, drawing circle after circle with my finger, my resentment so intense it could have blown the roof off. I curse you, I curse you, I curse you, regent. May you never find peace in the afterlife. Just as I was on the verge of losing my mind from being locked up, spending my days chatting with Brother Rat, the jailer threw a person into my cell, a man, nearly half dead. The smell of blood instantly filled my nostrils. The jailer locked the door while winking at me. I'm good to you, aren't I? I even found someone to keep you company. I looked at the man covered in blood, with not a single patch of unbroken skin on his body, and gave the jailer a smile uglier than crying. Brother, I really can't thank you enough. The jailer was surprisingly polite, smiling as he said, You're welcome. The man lay on the ground, motionless. I crawled over to check his breathing. Thankfully, he was still alive. I was a bit afraid he might die. Prison life was already hard enough. If there was a dead body next to me, I wouldn't need to wait for the autumn execution. I could just find a block of tofu to kill myself with right now. The man's face was covered in blood, and his whole body was burning with fever. The jailer brought a basin of hot water along with several bottles and jars, treatment I had never enjoyed before. I quickly grabbed the hem of his clothes and asked if I could also have a basin of hot water. The jailer pointed at the person lying on the ground, then pointed at me. He said disdainfully, What status does he have, and what status do you have? Let him deal with it himself when he wakes up. leaving me alone and indignant. We're all people about to be beheaded. Why bother distinguishing status? Staring at the motionless man, by the time he wakes up, the hot water will have gone cold. I couldn't bear it and ended up playing the Good Samaritan. I first moistened the towel with hot water, washed my face comfortably, and then began to wipe the man's face. I was gritting my teeth while wiping his face, and couldn't hold back a sob. The injuries on his body were truly horrifying. In many places, flesh had been gouged out, revealing stark white bones. I wasn't feeling sorry for him, but I had never seen such injuries before and was frightened, thinking about whether I might also be captured and subjected to such torture. A basin of hot water quickly turned red with blood. I kindly gave him a little water to drink, then poured all the medicine from those bottles and jars onto his wounds. When I went to sleep at night, I even covered him with all the blankets, leaving myself shivering from the cold in the middle of the night. After being woken by the cold, I couldn't fall back asleep at all. Glancing at the man in the corner, I clasped my hands together and silently prayed in my heart, "Heavenly God, I, Shiyang, have never done any bad deeds in this lifetime. I have a kind heart and even saved his life. Whether he lives or not, if you have any justice in heaven, you should spare me a way out." Seeing that he still wouldn't wake up, there was nothing more I could do. I've been taking care of him for 4 days now. Even in prison, I have to look after someone. This just isn't right. Bored out of my mind, I crouched on the ground alone, drawing circles. A weak voice sounded from behind, "If you curse him like that, what if he really can't turn things around?" I turned around sharply, and my goodness, this person had come back to life and could even speak. He seemed like a big shot. Even in his downfall, there was no sign of defeat on his face. His clean face made me feel he was out of place in this prison cell. After he woke up, there was hot water in the cell every day. I stared at him with longing eyes, my gaze filled with intense yearning. He sighed and helplessly said to the jailer, "Could you please bring an extra portion of hot water every day?" During meals, his food was better than mine, and I stared at him with longing eyes again. He sighed helplessly and pushed the dishes in front of me. I unceremoniously picked up a piece of meat and asked him with my mouth full, "What's your status? These people seem to treat you quite well." He didn't answer me. Sitting cross-legged on the ground with his eyes closed, not even picking up his chopsticks to eat. "Then what's your name? We're going to be stuck together for so long. We should at least know each other's names." "My name is Shiyang. What's your name after all? You haven't eaten for several days. Don't stand on ceremony. Let's eat together." The man finally opened his eyes, glanced at me faintly before closing them again, and only replied with 3 words, "Don't speak while eating." I was a bit speechless, so I picked out every last bit of meat from the dish, secretly getting back at him. "You didn't want to eat. Fine, I'll eat all the meat myself. Let's see what you'll have later." After finishing the meal, I took a walk around the cell to help with digestion. "Now, can you answer my question?" The man leaned against the wall, head lowered, his voice still as weak as ever. "My name is Xie, a prince who pledged allegiance to the late emperor." I put on an expression of understanding. So he was a prince. No wonder he received special treatment even in prison. "Then why are you in the same cell as me?" Xie was stumped by my question and shook his head, saying he didn't know. I raised my voice again and called for the jailer. The jailer looked at me with a deeply pained expression. "My dear lady, what is it this time?" I pointed at Xie. "Why is he locked up with me? Being in prison is so boring." Finally finding a topic to talk about, I just had to get to the bottom of it. "They've arrested too many people this time. The cells are almost full. You were arrested later and got an empty cell, and he came even later, so you ended up sharing." A light chuckle came from behind, very faint. Xieju's lips curved into a slight smile, seemingly amused by the guard's explanation. After the jailer left, a eunuch entered. Seeing him, Xieju's curved lips slowly straightened. The eunuch, with an air of arrogance, spoke in an exaggeratedly shrill voice, "Prince Xie, His Majesty has said that if you are willing to reveal the whereabouts of the 5th prince, your life may be spared." Xieju's voice was steady, betraying no emotion. "I must trouble you, eunuch, to convey my message. I cannot accept this honor." The old eunuch smiled, his wrinkles bunching together. "Oh, your highness, why must you be like this? One must understand the situation clearly to live a long life." As he spoke, he crouched down. The old eunuch kept a smile on his face while pressing his hand firmly onto Xieju's wounds. The injuries I had painstakingly bandaged began to bleed again. Xieju's lips trembled with pain, yet he didn't utter a single word of begging for mercy. The old eunuch pressed down with increasing force, his fingers even digging into the torn flesh of the wound. "Damn it, I'll have to treat these wounds all over again later." Furious, I grabbed the prison's urine bucket and dumped it all over the old eunuch. The old eunuch sprang to his feet with a start, yammering incessantly, "Yammer, yammer, yammer, what are you yammering about? You neither man nor woman, gloating over your petty gains here. Are you leaving or not? If not, I'll douse you again." I raised the bucket, making as if to splash him once more. The old eunuch gritted his teeth, stood up, grabbed my hair, and began slamming my head against the wall, caught off guard. I was hit so hard that I saw stars, my head buzzing and ringing. I shook my head and could still hear Sieju weakly calling my name. I rolled up my sleeves and started to go crazy, while screaming and attacking. I also clawed at his face. I knocked the old eunuch's hat to the ground, and while he was picking it up, I grabbed the chamber pot from the floor and splashed its entire contents all over him. When it comes to fighting, how dare an old eunuch challenge me? Did I spend all these years farming for nothing? The old eunuch was no match for me and fled in a pathetic, limping retreat. The cell was filled with an unpleasant smell. Sieju and I exchanged a glance, then both laughed. Hearing Sieju thank me, I grinned from ear to ear. I patted my chest. No big deal. If they dare bully you again, I've got your back. When it comes to fertilizing, I'm quite the expert. When the jailer came to deliver the meal, Sieju still refused to eat. I frowned. Never expecting him to be so psychologically fragile, I picked up the bowl and began shoveling the rice into my mouth in large mouthfuls. You, my friend, don't understand how to live freely. Even though we're all going to be executed sooner or later, we still have to eat this meal. Do you know how precious food is? You have to till the land, sow the seeds, water and fertilize the crops, and then harvest and dry the grains. I look down on those who waste food. It's truly shameful. Do you understand that every single grain comes from hard work? I understand that you've fallen from the clouds into the mortal world and feel upset, but don't let your stomach suffer along with you. I chatted on with my lecture, and Sieju, annoyed by my words, finally picked up his bowl and elegantly took a few bites of rice. I nodded with satisfaction. The boy was teachable. The improved meals did include meat, but only in the form of shredded pieces. Today it was shredded pork stir-fried with cabbage. Tomorrow it would be shredded pork with potatoes. As usual, I picked out all the shredded meat and put it into my own bowl. Sieju would only pick up his bowl and start eating after I had finished picking out the shredded meat. Out of humanitarianism, I did ask him first, "Sieju, do you eat meat? How about I eat it on odd days, and you eat it on even days?" Sieju put down his bowl and was about to scold me again. So I immediately raised my hands in surrender. "I get it, no talking while eating. I won't say another word, alright." Only then did Sieju continue with his meal. He picked up his chopsticks, selected a shred of meat from the dish, and placed it in my bowl. I gave him a thumbs up. "You're so thoughtful. I thought I'd picked out all of them." Sieju shook his head. Sieju sighed. Sieju remained silent. The weather was getting hotter and hotter. I asked the jailer what month it was, and he told me it was June. I lay on the ground in a spread eagle position, forcing Sieju to sit in the corner. I stared blankly into space, trying to cool myself down. Sieju asked me what I was thinking, and I turned my head to look at him. I couldn't take my eyes off him once I started looking. I had never seen anyone as handsome as Sieju. His skin was very fair, unlike the men in the countryside, whose skin was as dark as charcoal. Sieju's injuries hadn't healed yet, giving him the appearance of a delicate, sickly beauty. His hair was disheveled and scattered over his shoulders, evoking a sense of pity in anyone who saw him. During these days spent with him, we have built a deep friendship and gradually become quite familiar with each other. He isn't aloof either, occasionally even banters with me a bit. Every day follows the same routine, eating, sleeping, and chatting. In my days, I almost thought we were a married couple living our lives. I let out a long sigh, thinking about my family's land and the chickens I raised. They've probably starved to death by now. If it weren't for this regent, I wouldn't have ended up in such a state. Sieju kept staring at me, watching for a long time. Finally, as if he hadn't noticed anything, he suddenly spoke up. "I haven't asked you yet, what is your relationship with the regent?" Without thinking, the words slipped out of my mouth. "I am the sister of the cousin's aunt of the daughter brought by the ex-wife of the cousin of his great-grandfather's maternal uncle." Sieju, seeing him like this, I sprang up from the ground like a carp leaping out of water. Right. You find it ridiculous too, don't you? The family hierarchy is completely messed up. Even if they're just trying to make up numbers, this isn't the way to do it. This regent prince is something else. When he was living the good life, he never thought to promote me, but now that his household is being confiscated, he suddenly remembers me. The more I spoke, the more worked up I became. endlessly pouring out my grievances. If this happened to you, wouldn't you be angry? When I meet him in the underworld, I'll force him to be reincarnated as an ox. To plough my fields for me in his next life, to plough my fields for a lifetime. Regent, how will you repay me for the wealth and honor you owe me? My indignant expression made Xieju laugh again. He really looked so handsome when he smiled. Xieju brushed off the grass bits stuck in my hair and nodded in agreement with what I said. This regent is really a scoundrel. Sitting in prison alone is boring, but when two people are bored together, it's no longer called boredom. My mouth couldn't stay idle, so I pulled Xieju aside and started telling him stories about the countryside, from the chickens in the field to Aunt Wang's affairs. Xieju listened with great interest, occasionally chiming in with a few comments. You mistook snake eggs for bird eggs and even hatched them, only you could pull that off. Serves you right for getting chased by a dog after stealing melons from someone's field. You're incredibly lucky to have survived eating poisonous berries and still be here today. Most of the time, I was the one talking while Xieju listened. When my mouth got dry from all the talking, he was considerate enough to pour me water. I always felt that my life had been long, but when I talked about it, it seemed like I had recounted everything from my childhood to adulthood in just a few days. When autumn was approaching, someone took Xieju away. I held on to his leg, not wanting him to leave. My meal buddy, chat buddy, sleep buddy, what am I going to do without you? The jailer drew his sword, and within a second, I was so scared that I quickly let go. Go, go, go. If you want to leave, just leave. If you want to talk, just talk. Why pull out a sword? Xieju looked back at every step, exactly like how I was when I was captured. He silently mouthed two words to me, and I understood. He said, "Wait for me." With tears in my eyes, I nodded. Soon we would meet again in the underworld. Until his figure disappeared from sight, I sat back down in the corner, feeling desolate. After Xieju left, I was alone again, with no one to talk to. I could only sit there in a daze, waiting for mealtime. I missed him a little. Strange, when I first arrived I was alone, and after he left I was still alone. So why does it feel so unfamiliar now? In prison, there's no need to work the fields, it's just eating, drinking, and passing the time all day. I touched my face and felt that I had gained quite a bit of weight. This isn't so bad, at least I won't be a starving ghost on my final journey. I no longer have the anxiety of being beheaded. Having so many people accompany me on this final journey is truly a rare and beautiful thing. I am an orphan, having grown up alone in the countryside since childhood, never having met any relatives. All these people accompanying me on this journey share blood ties with me, so I won't be lonely even in death. What joy, what beauty. From another perspective, every corner of life is filled with blessings. Around the time when autumn was nearing its end, I was enjoying my meal heartily. A group of dark, shadowy figures approached my cell and bowed to me in unison. We have come to escort the princess consort back to the manor. I couldn't hold back and sprayed a mouthful of rice, choking and coughing uncontrollably. The moment I stepped out of the prison cell, my feet felt unsteady. As if everything was unreal, I followed a large group of people into a grand mansion. Princess, please go inside and rest. The prince is still at the palace and will return later. I randomly grabbed someone and asked, "Do you know who I am? Did you pick up the wrong person?" Because I hadn't spoken for a long time. My voice was a bit hoarse. "Are you the sister of the cousin of the daughter brought by the ex-wife of the cousin of the great-grandfather of the regent?" I nodded blankly. And he said there was no mistake. Someone led me into a room, which was very large and filled with all sorts of things. There were beautiful jewelry, fine fabrics, and most eye-catching were chest after chest of gold ingots. I was so dazzled by the gold ingots that I started breathing rapidly, yet I dared not touch them recklessly. At night, I lay in bed feeling bored and restless, unable to fall asleep for a long time, after sleeping on the prison cell floor for so long. Suddenly sleeping in a bed felt a bit unfamiliar to me. I decided to get up and take a walk outside, but the mansion was so large that I nearly got lost trying to find my way back. After finally finding my way, I spotted a tall, straight-backed figure in black heading toward my room. I lightened my footsteps and quietly followed him, keeping a distance between us. The man knocked on the door a few times and, receiving no response, anxiously pushed it open. Seeing that I wasn't there, he turned and walked back out. I had been a bit nervous at first, but all my tension melted away the moment I saw his face. I started calling out to him from afar, waving my hand, "Xieju, Xieju." Xieju's figure paused for a moment, and upon seeing me, the anxious expression on his face turned to joy. He took large strides and quickly reached me. My eyes were filled with the delight of reuniting with an old friend, and I looked up at him with a smile. great, you're not dead either, we're both still alive, you look so beautiful, I almost didn't recognize you just now. Xieju was dressed in purple with a white shawl draped over his shoulders, which perfectly outlined his figure. His hair was tied up high, completely erasing any trace of the disheveled appearance he had in prison. He was already handsome in prison, but now he's even more stunning, like a celestial being. So he really was a celestial being who fell from the clouds. Xieju furrowed his handsome brows, took off his shawl, and with a swift motion of his hands behind me, draped it securely over my shoulders. It's cold outside, why didn't you wear more? I rubbed my nose and smiled sheepishly, hoping to conceal my racing heart. The beautiful clothes in the room were lovely, but I didn't dare to wear them. What I had on was still the prison uniform I was released in. In comparison to him, it was quite amusing. A strange thought crossed my mind, and I tentatively asked him, "Is this mansion yours?" Xieju smiled and nodded, his charming peach blossom eyes curving along with his smile. I then pointed at myself and, mustering my courage, asked, "Then am I your princess consort?" "Well, you don't want to," facing the luxurious mansion and the handsome face before me. I simply couldn't bring myself to say I don't want to. I can't bring myself to say something that goes against my conscience. Actually, you don't need to repay me like this. Those things I did in prison were just small favors, not worth mentioning. Xieju stopped smiling, he bent down, subtly closing the distance between us. I caught the scent of incense on him. It was like a faint floral fragrance. My mind went completely blank, unable to think. Only one thought occupied my heart: help. He smells so good, I'm about to faint. The cold, desolate moonlight fell on his face, and Xieju's voice was bewitching. My soul was almost lured away by him. Not worth mentioning. But what if I've kept it in my heart? Don't you always say that I never think of you when I'm living a good life? I'm returning the wealth and honor I owe you now. Is it too late? With every word he spoke, he leaned in closer. I couldn't hold my ground and nearly stumbled. Xieju firmly supported my waist with one hand, his eyes smiling as he looked at me. I was thunderstruck and stammered, You are the regent." My heart is racing wildly, but this time it's not from excitement, it's from anxiety. I've heard that the regent holds grudges and seeks revenge for the smallest offenses. I cursed him every day in prison and witnessed him at his most destitute. Now that he's brought me into his mansion, could it be that he plans to silence me for good? Xieju slowly released me and escorted me back to my room. Not anymore. After the fifth prince ascended the throne, he infected me as a prince. I stood inside the room, separated from him by the threshold. My voice grew respectful as I clasped my hands in a formal salute, my attitude sincere. The prince is blessed with divine favor, and boundless blessings await in the future. Xieju cast a faint, sidelong glance at me, his tone unmistakably teasing to anyone listening. Utterly sycophantic, watching the corners of his mouth twitch as he struggled to hold back a laugh, I unceremoniously slammed the door shut. After a comfortable bath, I opened the wardrobe, which was filled with all kinds of clothes. I looked around and, as if guided by some inexplicable impulse, ended up picking a light purple inner garment, put it on, and fell into a deep sleep. Naturally, I had to flatter him, fearing that he would seek revenge for the slightest offense. If he had told me from the start that he was the regent, I would never have dared to insult him to his face. When I was locked up in prison, I had to curse the regent to his face at least 3 times a day. He never refuted me and would even nod along in agreement. Xieju, for some reason I couldn't fathom, insisted on marrying me. I decided to pack my things and run away. The first time, I climbed the high wall and leaped down, only to be caught securely in his arms. The second time, I found a dog hole in the backyard, but as soon as I poked my head out after crawling through, I saw Xieju standing there with his arms crossed, looking down at me from above. The third time, I went out openly, saying I wanted to stroll around the streets. Xieju stuck to me like a plaster, leaving me no chance to escape. "Has your highness been quite idle lately?" Xieju nodded. That's single. Neither light nor heavy of his stifled all the words I had intended to say back in my stomach. Wherever I went, Xieju followed. My eyes darted here and there, but in the end, I had no choice but to head back home. If we kept strolling any longer, he would have bought up everything on the entire street. Xieju trailed behind me with a pitiful look, his eyes wounded. Yang, what did I do wrong? Why don't you want to marry me?" I thought it over seriously. Having money, good looks, and power, of course, that's a good thing. Then why do you want to leave me? I scratched my head, then scratched my butt. I looked up at the sky, then down at the ground, and spoke with embarrassment. "I want to go home to see the chickens I raise." and the 2 taels of silver I buried under the tree. Xieju was stunned. As if he hadn't expected me to have such thoughts, his eyes sparkled again, like a puppy rewarded by its owner. And so, Xieju followed me back to my hometown. I strolled leisurely along the familiar path, stretching comfortably, east or west. Home is best. I immediately ran to the chicken coop to check on my chickens. Not only were they all alive and well, but they had also hatched a few chicks. The chickens had been raised plump and large, and the coop had been cleaned spotlessly. I was wondering who had done it when someone called out to me from behind. "Xiao Yang, you're finally back. Where have you been all this time?" I turned around and saw it was Brother Ernu. Brother Ernu looked at me with a simple, honest smile. "I noticed you were gone, so I fed your chickens every day and took good care of the crops in your field. They'll be ready for harvest in a few days." I feel like Brother Ernu is practically glowing. I'm just one smooth kneel away from prostrating at his feet. Xieju snorted indifferently. Unwarranted enthusiasm. His voice wasn't quiet either, making Brother Ernu instantly awkward as he stood there, unsure how to retort to Xieju. I laughed it off. "Brother Ernu, just ignore him. That's just how he is. Pretend he doesn't exist. You must come to our home for a meal another day. No excuses allowed." Ernu grinned again. He was a simple, honest man, and seeing that Xieju was dressed unlike an ordinary commoner, he naturally didn't take offense at Xieju's words. He asked me who Xieju was, and Xieju, without changing his expression, wrapped an arm around me. "I am Yang Yang's future husband, accompanying her back home for a visit." His grip on my shoulder was a bit too tight. I couldn't break free and could only force an awkward, dry laugh. After second brother Nyo left carrying his hoe, Xieju still stood there with a displeased expression on his face. "Another day? You want to wait for another day? You even want to invite him over for a meal? You've seen the chicken, and you've dug up the silver. Can't we just go back tomorrow?" I was so angry that I put my hands on my hips and pointed at his nose, yelling, "No way, he's been taking such good care of the house, feeding the chickens and working in the fields. What's wrong with me treating him to a meal? You still sneer at Brother Nyo, and now that I'm leaving, who will harvest the crops in the fields? Let them all rot in the ground." Xieju was left speechless by my scolding. Sitting back in his chair angrily, turning his back to me without a word, I thought Xieju would leave, but unexpectedly, he stayed with me in the countryside. He even volunteered to take on the task of feeding the chickens. The first time he entered the chicken coop, he stood frozen in place, too timid to step forward. Who would have thought the renowned Prince Regent is afraid of chickens? Xieju's face flushed red as he stammered, "Who says I'm afraid?" feigning composure. He scooped up chicken feed and scattered it on the ground. A flock of chickens swarmed toward the food. Upon seeing it, he suddenly took a big step back, then pretended to be calm and asked me, "Won't it peck me?" I couldn't be bothered to deal with him, stretching lazily as I went back to my room to rest. When second ox brother came to the door, he wore a proud expression, snatched the bucket from second ox brother's hands, and greeted everyone with a smile. "I won't trouble Brother Ernu with such small matters. From now on, I'll feed the chickens at home and farm the fields myself." Brother Ernu looked at Xieju's wealthy appearance and spoke with disbelief in his tone. "Do you even know how to feed chickens? Maybe I should still do it." Without changing his expression, Xieju rolled up his sleeves, mixed millet with wilted cabbage leaves, and skillfully fed the chickens while carrying the bucket. A handsome man looks good even when feeding chickens. While feeding, she kept glancing sideways at Brother Ernu with an undisguised expression of triumph, as if silently saying, "See, I feed them even better than you do." In the end, Brother Ernu left with a hurt look on his face. I asked him to stay for dinner before leaving, but he said he was in a hurry to go home and learn how to feed the chickens. I watched Xieju feeding the chickens and laughed so hard I was rolling on the ground. Who would believe it if I told them? The fearsome regent, who strikes terror into hearts, feeding chickens at my home. On the day of the autumn harvest, he followed me to the fields. He learned from me and gathered the harvest with great skill. Though he looked noble and refined, he didn't hesitate when it came to getting the work done. After getting the hang of it, he was even faster than me. The aunties in the field teased me. "Xiao Yang, where did you find such a man, handsome and hardworking?" Hearing these words, Xieju worked even harder. I was worried he might get tired and wanted to tell him to go back and rest, but seeing how excited he looked, I let him be. As the sun set, the evening glow was exceptionally beautiful, and we leaned against the haystack to rest. Xieju grinned, and I asked him what he was laughing about. He said he was happy, that harvesting could bring such joy. After 3 days of hard work, he couldn't laugh anymore. Xieju, holding his waist, left the field and told me to stop working. I lifted my head, exhausted like a dog, and looked at him. Are you going to support me if I don't work? Wait, it seems like he really could support me. Soon, 5 or 6 people arrived, and Xieju pointed at the field, giving them instructions. All of you, go down and harvest all the grain. Remember to thresh the husks off. Yes, Your Highness. The group exchanged glances but dared not disobey the order. I was also free and at ease. So I pulled Xieju and ran up the mountain, picking fruits, hunting wild rabbits, catching crickets. I was having the time of my life. After being locked up in prison for so long, I now felt like a monkey that had just burst out of a rock, leaping and bounding all over the place. Xieju followed behind me, also running until he was drenched in sweat. He ate the wild fruits, enjoying the mountain breeze as it swept by. Shiyang, so you've been living such a joyful life in the countryside. I was being narrow-minded, wanting to keep you in the capital. I looked at him with an expression that said he was an idiot, who wouldn't want a good life. But compared to this, I still prefer fine clothes, delicious food, gold, and jewels. Xieju was stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. I stared at the fruit in his hand, finding it more and more familiar. I tilted my head and thought for a long time before finally exclaiming in surprise, "When did you pick those wild berries? You're just putting them straight in your mouth. What's wrong? This is that poisonous fruit I ate before. Why didn't you say so earlier? I've already finished eating one." After finishing the work in the fields, I brought the whole chicken family onto the carriage. The carriage swayed all the way back to the capital. The food at Xieju's house is still the best, perfect in color, aroma, and taste. This bowl is also beautiful, with real gold trim on the rim, every time before eating. He pushes all the meat dishes in front of me. I suppose it's because I often snatched meat from him in prison, and he's gotten used to it. I can't even remember how many meals this is that I've had with him. It's absurd to think that in my 18 years of life, the person who has shared the most meals with me would be Xieju. Every time I think about this, I find the world truly amazing. Xieju, you're the one who has eaten the most meals with me. Thinking this, I said it out loud. Xieju raised an eyebrow. What a coincidence. You're also the person who has shared the most meals with me. I gazed at Xieju's handsome features, still not daring to voice the question in my heart. Why did Xieju marry me? Could it be that he likes me? But I'm so ordinary, and with his status, what kind of person hasn't he seen before? A thought flashed through my mind, and I slapped my forehead, suddenly realizing everything. I put down my chopsticks. Xieju, do you like eating with me? Did you develop feelings for me while we were eating together in prison? Upon hearing this, Xieju looked up, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth, and piled a big portion of food into my bowl. I suppose so, suppose so. What do you mean by suppose so? Thinking about running away before was just making excuses. I don't miss the chickens at home, nor do I care about those 2 tails of silver. I am afraid, I don't dare to face him. To be precise, I am avoiding him. In prison, we were all covered in dust. Regardless of our backgrounds, relying on each other for survival, we slept on the same kind of beds, ate the same kind of food. The first time I saw him in the mansion, he was wearing well-tailored clothes made of fabric that looked smooth to the touch, embroidered with beautiful patterns. That day, as I looked at him, I thought he resembled the moon, a lofty, unreachable moon. My eyelashes fluttered slightly as I concealed the uncontrollable sense of inferiority in my heart. Greeting him with a smile, I remember that day. Even the moonlight in the sky seemed to favor him especially, shining only on his face while leaving me hidden in the darkness. I am a very superficial person. My heart flutters at the sight of gold. I praise delicious food, and I feel happy living in a big house. When I see someone good-looking, I want to get closer and I like them. Xieju came to ask me what style of wedding dress I prefer. He looked at me with anticipation and recommended several styles. I flipped through the blueprints, my fingertips turning pale. I think I can no longer escape. Xieju, what do you like about me? Xieju held my hand. Do you want to know? Before I could respond, he started talking on his own. I like it when you talk, all chirpy and lively, and your laughter is like the sun. You might not believe it, but during the time I was unconscious, it was your voice that woke me up. I love how heartily you eat. Watching you enjoy your food with such gusto makes me feel that the world is truly wonderful. To this day, I never waste a single grain of rice. I love your optimism, your courage, and the vibrant way you live, just like the seedlings in the field that absorb everything to grow upward and generously give to others when mature. He said these words very gently. It was the first time I had seen him so tender. His face was full of sincerity, his eyes full of admiration. And you, what do you like about me? When Xieju asked me with a smile, in that instant, I seem to understand. Actually, there's no need to ask for these reasons. Liking is simply liking, it's an inclination that comes from the heart, from deep within. I pointed to a blueprint. I like this one. And I also want a phoenix crown and robes, and a 10-mile-long bridal procession. Xie was drawn to the style I pointed out. Alright, this one it is, whatever you say. I changed the subject just like that. I couldn't possibly say it's because I like your good looks. Everything seemed to fall into place naturally, and I thought of myself from a few months ago. If I could even face death with equanimity, why would I be afraid of falling for Xie? This is my blessing, the fortune that heaven owed me for 18 years, and now I'm going to claim it all back. On the wedding night, Xie had too much to drink and stumbled in unsteadily. He lifted my bridal veil, and I nervously clenched my fists. This was my first time getting married, and I was really nervous. Xie slowly moved closer, his ears flushed a deep red, and gently pressed a kiss to my lips. My heart hardened, and I pounced on him, pushing him onto the bed. I didn't even know what I wanted to do. In my haste, I bumped my head hard against Xie's chin, and I heard him let out a muffled groan. Xie stroked my head, his face flushed, and said, Yang, take your time. My face flushed with embarrassment, and I quickly scrambled to get up. Xie was half lying down, propping his head up with one hand, watching me with leisurely composure. I didn't dare look directly at him, closing my eyes, my fingertips clutching my clothes. I felt Xie lean closer, his breath spraying against my face, a little ticklish. Xie's lips slowly pressed against mine, and I followed him as he leaned back, feeling my clothes gradually being removed. I still didn't dare to open my eyes, and Xie chuckled softly in my ear. Yang, if you don't open your eyes soon, I'm going to start misbehaving. Hearing him say that, I became even more afraid to open my eyes. As long as I couldn't see it, the awkwardness would belong to someone else. Xie let out a light laugh and began to act mischievously. I couldn't bear it any longer and finally opened my eyes, tearfully begging for mercy. Xie's body stiffened, and he dragged me back, biting down on my collarbone as if to punish me. Too late, he ignored my words, holding me even tighter, as if trying to press me completely into his body. The sound of his panting struck my eardrums again and again. I was crying pitifully, but he didn't slow his movements, only comforting me over and over. Yang, it'll be over soon, just this last time. It wasn't until the distant crow of a rooster was heard that Xie reluctantly let go of me. With tears in my eyes, I fell into a deep sleep. I slept until the sun was high in the sky, and when I opened my eyes, I saw Xie smiling at me. I slapped him across the face and turned over. Not wanting to look at him, Xie shamelessly pressed closer. Don't be mad, Yang, aren't I just fulfilling what you said? I was puzzled and turned over again. What did I say? He leaned close to my ear, his lips brushing against my earlobe. You said before, let me be your ox, plowing the fields for a lifetime. Xie wore a mischievous grin, twirling my hair between his fingers. It's still a while until lunch. Let's sleep a little longer. I felt like crying but had no tears left. Oh heavens, this blessing is just too overwhelming.